Hello and welcome, everyone. We're really glad to have you here today for this presentation, the next iteration of our series, Day One and Beyond, which takes you through a series of topics and activities related to building out on Oracle Cloud. For anyone that might be new to these events, we're hosted on Cloud Customer Connect, which is our Oracle community forum for end users. You'll see some links throughout, and I'll be sharing some resources that lead you back to those forums. So if you're not already a member, we invite you to join in, create a free account, ask questions, find discussions, upcoming events, all kinds of things. My name is Kenna Kettrick. I'm a program manager with the OCI Go-to-Market team. And today I'm joined by Jeremy Walker, Master Principal Cloud Architect, and Larry Beausoleil, Cloud Engineering Senior Enablement Manager. And today we have a special guest to the series, Pablo Sanchez, Senior Principal Product Manager, for a deep dive into our OCI Cloud Adoption Framework. And I think that is about enough for me. So Jeremy, go ahead and take it away. It's all yours.
Thank you so much, Kenna. Appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Day One and Beyond. And as Kenna said, my name is Jeremy Walker, and I'm joined with Larry Beausoleil in spirit. He's a bit under the weather, but he's with us. And so we wish him well. You'll be hearing my voice, sadly, for most of the day, along with Pablo, and hopefully learn a good bit about the Cloud Adoption Framework. Let's start this. As mentioned, Larry and I both are with Oracle. We have some engineering experience applying these architectures and customer frameworks and workloads to the cloud. But a lot of times we need help internally on the right way to do it. Reference architectures, best practices, and we have crazy smart people inside of Oracle that help us with that. And we're joined by one of those today with Pablo Sanchez. Pablo, welcome to Day One and Beyond.
Awesome. Thank you, Kenna. Just taking up from where Jeremy left, I'm very, very excited to join this session today. As Kenna and Jeremy kindly introduced me, I'm the Director of Product Management for this Cloud Adoption Framework. And we are very, very excited to share a lot of the progress that we have made along this very, very interesting project. We know that cloud adoption is something that a lot of customers think about. It's a complex process. So we are very, very happy to provide this framework to help all of our customers to understand what is the prescriptive guidance, what is the right approach that OCI suggests when onboarding into the cloud. So we're very, very excited to share some of what we have developed, also share a little bit of the roadmap and the vision that we have for this project. And just taking a look at the poll that Kenna kindly popped up there earlier today, I feel that it's going to be very, very interesting for you to hear what is a cloud adoption framework, how is OCI framing this conversation, and then how are we going to help you with the landing zone so that you can actually get started into the cloud adoption process. This is the agenda that we have for today. So we're going to start with a quick OCI review to get everybody up to speed on where we are. We have made a ton of progress in the different regions and in the different services that we have released for our customers. Then we're going to jump into the specifics of an overview of the what is of the Cloud Adoption Framework. What is it? How is it going to be useful for you? And then we're going to drill down into the 6 pillars that we have as part of this OCI Cloud Adoption Framework. So very, very excited to share with you, as we have shared in the text pane. If you have questions, please pop them into the text pane that you have in the Zoom tool, and we will be happy to address them as we move forward. Or if you want to wait until the end, that's also a good opportunity for you to ask any questions that you might have. So without further ado, let me just check back if Jeremy's back. Jeremy, are you back? No, it looks like we don't have Jeremy yet. So let's keep going here. So we always like to start with this slide that we have here. So as you might imagine, there's a lot of market cloud vendors out there in the market. And we like to start with this slide because we want everybody to understand that OCI has made an amazing progress with all of the different services that we have around cloud. As you can see on the left column that we have there, we want to ensure that we have developer services, we have low-code applications, we have application development services, and then we can also help you with infra as a code tools. So the idea here is we're going to help you create a very strong solution for all of the issues or services that you want to start implementing as part of your organization. So we want to ensure that we have those tools available for the developers. Then if we move forward, we have the applications. And as you might see here, we want to provide the full stack. It's not only about compute or storage. We also are here to provide serverless services so that you can start iterating with the right approach towards developing the right applications and ensure that you can build that stack as you need it. Around data and AI, of course, sorry, we can go back to the previous slide. Yeah, around data and AI, as you might imagine, we have a lot of different services there. That has been Oracle's strong suit for the previous years. So we want to ensure that we have this opportunity to provide all of these services to our customers as well. Then, of course, we can move into our database services, our core infra services, and all of this is obviously going to be well governed, managed, and operated with the right tools. So we are here to provide the right approach to our customers. We are here to provide a very comprehensive set of portfolio applications in the cloud, and we want to ensure that we are there for you with any of the opportunities that you have to onboard workloads into the cloud. And then if we move to the next slide that we have there, we can talk a little bit about what is the cloud? What are the services that we have? So let's move to slide number 6, please. And then, as you can see here, we have a very comprehensive set of assets. We can provide IaaS, infrastructure as a service, focused mainly on the infra side of the space. Or if you are willing to just operate as a platform or even just use software as a service, we are able to provide all of these services for you. So it's all about understanding what's the real opportunity that we have, what are the needs that you have as an organization, and then we can definitely discuss what would be the best approach for us to start driving this. And it looks like Jeremy is back. So Jeremy, do you want to complement or add anything to these couple of slides that we were talking about?
Oh, no, you did a great job filling in, and I apologize for my disappearance. And it sounds like you did a great job. You hit it right on the head. What we wanted to touch on here was why it's important. Like you mentioned, why CAF is important, where it comes into play. And you mentioned it here with the customer responsibility, the idea of making sure that you hit all of these pinpoints for making sure that your data safe, application accessibility is all managed. And that is what CAF provides. And I want to get right into it. We have a slide here next that talks about where this matters. And we have the infrastructure all over the world. And CAF matters because you do have this capability to spread your data center to, from one side of the planet to the other. You need to be able to manage it, which you're gonna go into as far as manageability, monitorability, event response. So you have to have that same, I guess, attitude that you had on-prem on protecting all those assets. You have to have that same for cloud. And then you have that bigger responsibility, and CAF goes into the way to set that up using our best practices so that you have that same sense of security, same sense of ownership that you have with your servers inside of your data center. So going right into the CAF, I'm going to have a brief synopsis, and then Pablo, I want you to go in. We're going to hit all these pillars in line in a bit more detail, but just going quick, the idea of business people strategy, the concept of organizing your business, organizing your people in, I'm not going to say a completely new way, but in a way that's more conducive to a cloud operating model. This typically means you set up like a CCOE or a way that you organize your security as we go through, organize your process, organize your tech in a way that meets your needs, hits your goals for where you want to be with your business. Security, job zero, as everybody should attest to. The idea that you need to protect your cloud assets, need to protect your data assets, need to protect your compute assets all across the line in a controlled and a structured and in the most secure way possible. That's the baseline for security. Process design is going to be different. You have on-prem process and procedures. A lot of those translate to cloud. Not all of them do. Cloud requires a different skill set, also a different idea of what it means to to provision assets, what it means where your procurement process was on-prem. It's going to be different in the cloud. How do you wrap your head around that? How do you make sure that all your checks or your boxes are checked to make sure that everything's done correctly? And then going into implementation, actually management of that implementation, how does this extend your business? What additional resources do you get simply by going to the cloud? What opportunities are now afforded you because you're in the cloud? And then how do you manage those opportunities? How do you set those guideposts? How do you set those boundaries so that you're operating again securely and also within the right operating model that best fits your business needs? And so we're going to hit all of these. And Pablo, starting out, I want to talk about this in business strategy.
Let's start
these
here.
goals. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, let's start here. As Jeremy was describing, adopting the cloud is a complex process. It's not only about implementing a new technology and we're done. It's actually going to affect the way in which the organization operates. So this is why starting with the business strategy is the most important point of the cloud adoption framework. We want to understand what is the key goal that the organization wants to achieve with cloud adoption to then ensure that we're going to have a successful project. So to support this, I always like to ask the questions, what are we trying to achieve with cloud adoption? I have heard in the conversations that I have with customers, a lot of good reasons, and then some other that are not really that good. And let me share one of the best ones that I've heard. The best one is, I want to be more agile. I want to hit the market faster. Another one is, I want to ensure that I have additional technical capabilities that I cannot have on premises. Because as you know, the market is moving super fast, and cloud is one of those key assets that we can leverage to remain competitive in our respective markets. So being very clear on what are the goals that the organization is trying to achieve will help us, first of all, secure the sponsorship, socialize the vision, and then make sure that we are removing resistance as much as possible. Change is hard. Nobody likes change. So we need to understand what are going to be the key benefits, the key goals that we want to achieve. And then in that way, the organization can rally behind what we're doing. Now, let me share another example of what's not a great reason. Why do we want to adopt the cloud? Well, our leadership team told us we have to adopt the cloud. So there are a lot of ways to adopt the cloud, but if it's not reflecting into the actual goals that the organization has, it's going to be very hard to secure that sponsorship that we were talking about. So that's why setting a very clear goal, and let me be very specific here, probably setting one to start with is going to be the key to support all of the cloud adoption process that we're going to follow. So that's the number one recommendation that we have here. Set on a goal, make sure that you socialize it, and make sure that it's well aligned to the overall key indicators that the organization is going to pursue in the short term. Now, how do we make the case for that? Now that we have a clear goal in mind, it's very good to start defining a business case. And those business cases have been around for a long time. And I think that specifically for the cloud adoption process, they are very helpful. And you are basically going to answer 4 questions with the business case. What is the goal of the cloud adoption, the one that we just defined in the previous step? What is the business value that we're going to achieve? What resources and investments we need? And when are we going to see those benefits? If you can answer those 4 questions, then you're going to be very successful in securing that sponsorship, securing the resources, and as I mentioned earlier, removing the resistance to change that we have. And finally, documenting that business value, showing the results that we're achieving, showing those quick wins on how we are progressing towards cloud adoption are going to be the key performance indicators that will help us secure additional funding, additional vision for new projects to deploy into the cloud. So that's why the business strategy is so important, because at the end, this will be the guiding principle that will help us get the sponsorship that we need from all over the organization and to ensure that we are all marching towards a common goal. Is that clear, Jeremy? Does this help?
Yeah, it is. And I think there's a reason why this is number one, because this is ground one, getting that sponsorship, as you mentioned, getting that buy-in from leadership. One thing that I was going to just ask, is there any good benchmarks or any good, I guess, artifacts that we would suggest coming out with that are good to kind of have at day one, to kind of have and maybe a living document to to grow with you through your cloud model, or anything good just to have on hand or in prep for building a good business strategy?
Absolutely, yes. As part of the link that you shared in the previous slide, our customers can go to the OCI Cloud Adoption Framework webpage. Right there, we have added a business case section specifically with a template that you can use so that you can start documenting and socializing what we are trying to achieve with cloud adoption. So I would strongly suggest you to go over that document, copy paste it, and start developing in a brainstorm session with some of the key stakeholders so that you can start documenting that business case. And that's actually a great segue to the next slide that we have here, and actually the next pillar of CAF, which is the people strategy. So as I was mentioning, it's going to be very, very important to brainstorm with the key sponsors and who should be those people. And that's why we start the people strategy with the Cloud Center of Excellence. What is a Cloud Center of Excellence? It's a multidisciplinary team that will help us secure the sponsorship, but also to guide the project towards cloud adoption. We want to ensure that we have an executive team involved here, so we have, of course, the right guidance for all of the organization. Then we also need to understand who are going to be the business stakeholders that are going to see the benefits of the cloud adoption process. And then we also need to include the technical team. The technical team are the people who will actually be implementing all of these solutions in the cloud, and that will be ultimately responsible for the deployment, the architecture, and the operations of these new solutions that we have in the cloud. So it's critical and very, very important that we formalize a Cloud Center of Excellence. It is a best practice to ensure that this Cloud Center of Excellence has a regular cadence to meet, to discuss what's the project that we're going to pursue with cloud, what are the different progress in the work streams that we have towards cloud adoption, and then to ensure that we report back on that business value that we described on the previous pillar of what are the benefits that the organization is seeing towards the cloud adoption. So really, really important to formalize that Cloud Center of Excellence. So the next step is we have the sponsors, we have the executive team, we have the business team, we have the technical team. They are all working together. But as you discussed, Jeremy, it's very, very important to understand that cloud is not only about deploying new technology. There are some changes that need to happen, and changes include a lot of different components, from the financial area to the technical area to even the business area. Ideally, when we are adopting the cloud, we're going to be enabling the organization for a very automated process in which they can start adopting the cloud in the right way. If we don't do it in the right way, then there might be some opportunities for creating what we call shadow IT. Given that the cloud does not require a lot of the different processes that probably the organization had when they were working completely on premises, we can open the door for these shadow IT workloads, or shadow IT, or unsanctioned, let me call them unsecured workloads, to start popping up here and there in the organization. So it's very, very important for us to understand what are the changes that the cloud brings into the organization. It is very important that we share what are going to be the guidelines for when we are deploying workloads into the cloud. And in that way, we can ensure that we keep control of the cloud environment while providing to the organization the agility and the technology that they need to become a very, very successful organization that is pursuing the goals that we described in the previous stage. Finally, once that we have said that cloud is different from on-premises, we need to help our people be successful. So we need to formalize a skilling and readiness plan. And this, I cannot stress enough how important this is. This is actually the #1 blocker to onboarding to the cloud in the right way, is the skilling and readiness. We need to work with HR, if possible, to ensure that there is a formal skilling and readiness plan, that all of the people from the 3 areas that we talked, the executive team, the business team, and the technical team, know what cloud is about. They are fully familiar with what's going to happen, and then ensure that the technical team has the right tools so that they can onboard all of these workloads into the cloud in the right way. This is where the certifications come into place. This is where the specific third-party offerings towards skilling and readiness can help a lot to ensure that people feel comfortable with all of the changes that are about to happen, and that they are very, very comfortable using and operating all of these cloud technologies that we have. So with this, we ensure that the people are behind the effort, that we are removing change resistance as much as possible, and that everybody has a clear understanding of what will happen and how it will happen.
Yeah, and that's, again, we're building up. Obviously, you have that business case. Now you take this next step to actually get your business ready to move forward. I know Cloud Center of Excellence is really important to establish. I know I've had customers that are a little resistant to setting up a CCOE for one reason or another, but it's vitally important to do at least the next two steps well for change management and skill readiness. And I want to put in that right now Oracle has, I think we've still extended our free training and free certifications through a few more months. So if that's something that is a need or even a question mark in your company, I'd look into that, because that will get, again, skilling up so that you're qualified, your teams are qualified and are comfortable going into the cloud. One question I was going to have is, in change management and skilling, Pablo, what have you seen as more important as far as tooling is concerned versus, some of the automated processes that are home built? How important is tooling and making sure that there's a clear process for this change management within this construct around the people factor?
It is a critical point, and it's going to depend a lot on what the Cloud Center of Excellence dictates that should happen. The recommendation here is let's start with a workload that makes everybody feel comfortable. That quick win will help us, first of all, understand how easy it is for the organization to work in this new cloud environment. And then we can iterate on top of that to start adding more complex workloads until we get to the point of even migrating mission-critical applications from the organization. So with this experience and building on top and iterating, the organization will be able to define what are the processes that are worth automating, because as we mentioned, we want to ensure that we bring this agility back to the organization. But at the end, we need to ensure that there is a very thoughtful process around risk management. So it's going to be up to the organization to define which processes to automate and which ones to keep manual to ensure that the right governance and risk and compliance processes are embedded as part of that process. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. It will depend on the organization, but with small quick wins and iteration, the organization should be able to describe and define those processes probably in a couple of iterations.
Yeah, definitely. And moving, again, we're building up the stack, moving right into security, because we established that CCOE, we're trained up, we're ready to start writing bytes to disk. But before we start there, we have a super important step that we have to address, and it is security, I would say.
Exactly. And we talked in the previous slide about the number one blocker for cloud adoption, which is skilling and readiness. Security is actually the number two blocker. Of course, cloud makes people nervous, right? If you are not very familiar with the processes that are included as part of the cloud operations, like the ones that OCI has, for example, it's pretty obvious that people will get nervous, right? So that's why we started our previous section for people, not only about training our technical staff, but also making sure that the executive team and the business teams understand what is the security that we have around these cloud environments. So we always like to start these conversations with the architecture. And what I mean is OCI's own architecture. So we want to ensure that everybody that will be involved in these cloud adoption processes understand all of what OCI is putting into the cloud infrastructure. We are designing our cloud with security from start. So it's not something that we are adding at some point with some tools. All of our product definition starts from security. So we want to ensure that all the customers know about all of what we have here. We have customer isolation, we have data encryption, we have security controls, we provide visibility, we provide high availability, and we can allow the customers to verify all of the security infrastructure. So that's where we start. We want everybody to understand that the foundation is solid. But then we also need to help the organization understand that security is a joint responsibility. So while we provide a secure infrastructure, the customer will be ultimately responsible for securing a lot of the information that they put into the cloud. So security controls are part of the responsibility of the customer. Identity and access management, we want the customers to understand who has access to the environment that they are putting into the cloud. What are they allowed to do? When are they allowed to do that? So it's very important for the customer to understand this identity process so that they can assign the right resources to the right people at the right time. Then we need to talk about workload security. As we start moving databases, compute instances, storage to the cloud, we also need to ensure that all of what the customers are putting out there is well secured and well maintained. As part of that, and we were talking about storage, we are moving at some point data into the cloud. So it's going to be very important for the customer organization to define what's the data classification, what's the compliance that they will have around that data, so that we are removing any risks from this cloud adoption process. And from there, we need to talk about the other key points around security: host security, network security, and client and endpoint protection security. So it's all about this shared responsibility model where OCI provides the right foundation, and then we work with you as customers to ensure that all of the workloads, data, and information that you're moving into the cloud remains secure as we are onboarding into the cloud. The next step is about maintaining. Okay, we have moved information into the cloud, we have moved these workloads. Now we need to understand if everything remains secure. So we need to understand if there are any security risks associated with configuration drifts. Did somebody have access to something? Did they move any control that we had around security? Is there something that we need to monitor there to ensure that we are not exposed at any time to any security threats? So all of that is what is covered in maintenance. It's not only maintenance, but it's also about monitoring and prevention. We need to understand if we have any persistent threats. Are there anything that we need to be aware of? We know attackers are going to be out there, so we need to understand how to protect our information from them. We need to understand how our perimeter is being exposed to the internet. And then, as I was mentioning earlier, we need to understand if there are any unsanctioned or shadow IT workloads out there that we need to pull back into the right security configurations and definitions to ensure that we are controlling our full stack into the cloud. And all of that is then maintained into this strategy that we have. The strategy needs to be simple, it needs to be very prescriptive, it needs to be integrated, and it needs to be affordable. What does that mean? So when we talk about simple, it's always on. Security needs to be something that needs to be part of the design, needs to be part of the different structure that we're building for our workloads, and it has to be always on. It's not something that we talk about after the fact. It has to be there. Then it has to be prescriptive. What does that mean? These are the recipes that are going to enforce our posture and that are going to be automated so that we can keep our baseline management. And this is what I was talking about earlier. If we have shadow IT and somebody adds a new workload to the cloud, it doesn't matter that they didn't tell me. If I have the right prescriptive controls in place, they will automatically be either aligned to the security posture or they will be turned off because we have these automated controls. And then integrated, what does that mean? Well, we need to talk, as we discussed, it's not only about the workloads, it's about identity, it's about the platform, it's about the network, and it's about the application services. We need to ensure that all of those security principles are well aligned throughout the stack. And then affordable, that means there shouldn't be any complicated patterns to actually ensure that we have the right security principles. A great example here are passwords. So if you give one person the opportunity to decide what their password is going to be, they will select one. But then if you start adding, oh, you need a capital letter, okay, it becomes more expensive. Oh, you need a number, okay, more expensive. Oh, now you need a special character, it's even more expensive. And then it doesn't have to be anything that you have used in the past 12 months. What will happen at some point is that people will just start using unsecure passwords because they are so difficult to maintain. And we can extrapolate this concept to all of the other security practices that we have. If we make it so hard to follow, then people will end up not following them. So those are the security principles that we need to think of. And as you might see at this point, we should be ready to start trying the cloud, start moving into the cloud with the right guardrails in place.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that covers all the baselines that to get you hit it with the simple, because if it's simple, it's easy to, people are going to follow it. That's the thing. If people aren't going to do what they're supposed to, if it takes them out of their comfort zone or is too convoluted, I think we know that just from psychology, looking at everything else. So that's one of the biggest things And you mentioned simple and affordable go right together. The one that I focus on from my background is always that deployment. Security starts at the very beginning. When you write code, your developers start the security practice from the moment that they start developing the application or start configuring the solution that's either on a SaaS or even an Oracle database as you're developing it out. It has to start with that deployment and then maintained throughout. And you hit it. Integrated is a big part of that. And it keeps, so like you said, now we're secure. Let's actually start getting into the cloud. And so it goes into designing the process.
Exactly.
And so you take, oh yeah, exactly. You take everything we've took to this point and then you start actually doing some work.
Exactly. This is where we actually start talking about technology. So people are sometimes surprised, like, oh, we are already in the fourth pillar, and this is the point where we talk about technology. Yes, this is the right time to do it. If you try to do it before, I'm pretty sure something's going to break before you actually start deploying. So at this point, once that you have selected your and socialize your business strategy, your people strategy, and your security strategy, then at this point is when you are actually ready to start talking about technology. Technology should align to the processes that you have and not the other way, because you all have heard it. The culture, it's everything else for lunch. So culture is the most important aspect. So if you are at this point still unsure if you have nailed the three main strategies that we described before, go back and do them. This is the point where you start moving into technology. So you need to ensure that the people and business strategies are locked on and everybody has a clear understanding of what to do next. So let's talk about enterprise architecture. And we talked a little bit about this. What's the recommendation here? Let's think small and iterate. It's not going to be a one size fits all. It's not a magic recipe that will work for everybody. Even if we are working with customers that are pursuing a huge migration and they are basically leaving their data centers behind and moving everything to the cloud, the right way to do it is to have a gradual migration. And this means let's start with a small workload. Let's ensure that we learn on how we should start adopting the cloud. Let's iterate on that. Let's refine the processes, and then let's move on to the next workload. This is the key process that we need to follow here. So again, let's talk a little bit about how to do it, because we have to break it down. Probably the first question that we need to ask here is, again, based on what the organization is trying to achieve, is what is the scale of the project that we're looking at? So if the goal is to just automate one process or to improve in one specific business department, then there's probably not a lot of questions that we need to ask. But if the organization is, on the other hand, trying to move a lot of their data centers to the cloud, then we need to start thinking about what's going to be the approach. Are we going to keep a hybrid architecture? Are we going to go for a multi-cloud architecture? Are we going to have a multiple vendor architecture? So those are the kind of questions that we need to clear out with the Cloud Center of Excellence that we described in the earlier stages. So as you might imagine, if we don't have the Cloud Center of Excellence, we're not going to make a lot of progress here. That's why it's so important to have it locked and loaded by the time you reach this stage. And at that point, we totally recommend start thinking of what's the definition, what's the timeline that people are aiming for, especially the executive committee of the Cloud Center of Excellence. And then from the technical perspective, we need to have an assessment of what's the complexity and the viability of the implementation. With that, we will be able to start defining what's going to be our project plan for cloud adoption. And something very, very important to include as part of this plan are what are the threats, what are the mitigation strategies, what are the escalation paths. Again, Cloud Center of Excellence is going to help a lot. And then from the technical perspective, we need to understand if there are some obsolescence issues that we need to solve. Some people call it technical debt. So very, very important to highlight that here. If there's some licensing issues that we need to talk about, or even if there are some cloud, non-cloud applications that we need to think of that will not be able to move into the cloud. With that, we can then focus on compatibility issues. And then in some of the architectural inhibitors that we might have, that means if there are some on-premises appliances or if there's some complexity that we need to think of and think here of governance, risk, and compliance, that's actually where we start thinking about these two. how do we actually then start making this a reality for our own organization? And governance and risk and compliance, let me talk about them at the same time. Governance talks a little bit more about how we want to rule the cloud environment that we will be building. Who is going to be responsible for the resources, and with who I mean who are the users or the groups that will be able to modify some of these resources. What are the different tags, compartments, and tenancies that we will start deploying into our OCI environment so that everybody has the right amount of control, but we are also removing all kinds of risks that should happen there. So the principles are pretty simple. Who, what, when. Who do we want to give access, what access they will have to, and when should they have access to all of that. And based on that, we will start thinking of how we start deploying our environment for the cloud. And actually, this will help us a lot in the next step, because keep this in mind, with all of those questions that we are posing right now, we will start then creating what we call a landing zone. So that landing zone I'll cover in a few seconds, but this will actually help us answer a lot of the questions that we will need there. The other very, very important point about governance, sorry, Jeremy, just wanted to close on this one, is cost management. Go ahead.
No, you nailed it. Yeah, I was going to make that transition, but yeah, you're go ahead with the cost or risk management, and then we can go directly in the landing zone. I was going to mention how the risk governance is going to help lead the decisions that you're going to make, and then as far as what your landing zone looks like, how it and how it's deployed, and again, what levels and gates and stuff you put into it. But yeah, finish this thought, and we'll go directly into it.
Yeah, and risk and compliance, we were talking about blockers, right? So we mentioned blocker number 1, skilling and readiness, blocker number 2, security, blocker number 3 is cost. So why is cost so complicated in the cloud? Well, first of all, it changes radically from the way in which IT is used to spend money for procurement, right? IT is mostly used, if they are only working on premises, to buy some hardware, deprecate it in the next 3, 4, or 5 years, depending on the organizational strategy. And then they are ready to buy some new hardware. And in the cloud, this is completely different. In most cases, you will be moving into either a pay-as-you-go model, or you can do a commitment for consumption, and then it will be full responsibility of the organization to understand how to spend this money in the cloud. So very, very different, very, very important to ensure that we are talking with our financial counterparts, with our finance area, so that we can talk with them. And again, do you remember that we had skilling and readiness for the executive users as well? That's why we had that, because at this point, it's going to be very, very important for us to talk with them, to understand how we're going to pay for the cloud, and to identify which is the best model that will work for the organization. So again, very, very important in the governance space, who is going to pay for the services. We have seen that some organizations go with either a show back or a charge back model. Some others like to keep the funding of cloud services centralized by finance. So again, it depends on the organization, how they want to achieve these goals and how they want to move forward with that. So with that, we can go into the next topic, which is the technology implementation, which you, Jeremy, were already sharing a preamble. So I'll
exactly.
I'll you.
No, yeah, and you mentioned, and I know a lot of times in my head, I'll think governance, compliance, regulatory. That's things you really don't have a choice. You're going to implement those things, and then risk is kind of things you do have a choice. You have to balance. How much do we want to pay for what level of risk? And this is really seen as we build out in this landing zone and then go through the migration modernization, because how secure do you want to be? How much, and it goes to how much do you want to pay for? You talk about even DR strategy. How it costs you. Do you want to completely replicate your landing zone, replicate your data center in another region or another another cloud in some cases, or do you how do you want to draw that scale back and forth? And it really comes down to this foundation of your cloud existence. And so, there's several choices we've kind of not isolated, but qualified them into a couple of different ones that go to what you were saying. what are the scale, what is the risk, and then how do you want to balance those things?
Awesome. Yeah, so let's talk now about the technology implementation. So this is, and again, we talked about 4 pillars already. We talked about what needs to happen, but we haven't actually touched on how to do it until this point. So as you see, and this is how this is why the cloud adoption framework is so important. Because if we don't have a solid foundation for the landing zone, then I'm pretty sure that we will have a lot of blockers and a lot of remediation will need to happen to ensure that we have the right environment in place. So what is a landing zone? So the key question that we're answering with a landing zone is, how do I get started? This landing zone that you see here, the enterprise scale baseline landing zone, is basically the reference architecture that you can deploy directly into the OCI console to start implementing all of those guidance and policies that we have describing over the last few pillars. So in governance, we talked about, hey, we need an enterprise architecture. So what does that mean? Okay, let's start with, again, identity. At this point is where you actually start providing to the console the identity of who are the people that will be in charge of operating the cloud. Then what are they going to be able to do? Are they able to just create new spaces so that we can allocate new workload space, new storage space? Or will they be able to actually modify some of what the other organizations are also building inside my tenancy, which is my account? So all the translation of that governance and enterprise architecture section that we had in the previous spot is actually now consumed by this enterprise scale baseline landing zone. So this is basically a wizard that you follow inside the console, and then you start answering those questions. Who are the people? And you submit the user credentials. What are they going to do? And you let the wizard know which compartments they will be able to modify. And then automatically, as you keep updating all of that information, the landing zone will deploy a complete environment with the right governance, security segmentation, and separation of duties so that you feel comfortable with what you are uploading into the cloud and ensuring that you have that security foundation that we talked about in the 3rd pillar. So this is basically a wizard that aims to accelerate the start point, which is where a lot of the customers spend a lot of time. And in this way, we will be able to provide that prescriptive, secured guidance of how to build an OCI environment with the right foundation in place. The enterprise scale baseline landing zone is one of the options that we have. But then if there are some additional concerns about security, and we are starting, as we mentioned, with a very specific workload in mind, then we can use the additional self-service landing zone, which is completely based on the CIS Foundation's benchmark for Oracle Cloud. This is another landing zone that we have as an option here that is mainly focused on security. It has some additional options to modify the security that customers might be looking for. So we have these 2 options. Those are prescriptive guidance. These are vetted by OCI engineering teams so that you can ensure that your starting point will be, first of all, secured, but will also allow you to grow as the different demands of your organization require. So very, very excited to share this. We actually launched this a week ago. So we're very, very excited to share this great product with you because it will help you get started with the right foot into OCI Cloud. Any additional comments here, Jeremy?
Oh no, I was looking, because it's something that I was going through and thinking of where I've implemented this in the past on the idea of the CIS benchmark and how useful it is to have something to start from. So yeah, I'm super excited we're putting this forward as well as the enterprise scale, because it does give our customers that idea of what is it supposed to look like, and that's what that's very useful to have, especially if you're new going to the cloud, or even like we mentioned, if you're a CCOE who are looking at what is it supposed to look like, what should we be targeting, and how do we get there. This is extremely useful.
Exactly. And then the next step is, as we were discussing, sorry, if we can go back to the previous slide, we have a couple of additional items that we're working on right now, the migration and modernization scenarios. So the landing zone will be the one that helped me set up the infrastructure. So compute, storage, networking, identity, compartments, all of the full structure of the environment will be set up by the landing zone. But then, depending on the needs that I had, and again, going back to my initial pillar, what do I want to achieve? So this is where we can start building on top of that landing zone. And in some cases, for customers who are looking to move away from the data center business, it's all about migration. They have either VMware or Linux instances that they want to move to the cloud. So the migration approach will be the right one for them. In some other cases, there's already a specific need that the business might have of creating a new application. And we were talking at the beginning of the session of serverless or developer services. So this is where you actually start then operating on top of that cloud to achieve that cloud foundation, to achieve those specific business goals that you're looking for. So we will be working in some of these scenarios. So actually at the end of the session, I have a poll for you to hear from you what would be interesting, where do you need help? And we can start getting our teams to work on some prescriptive guidance for that. Yeah,
then migration's huge. Well, it's not just huge. It's most of our customers are coming from a place of establishment, something where something's been built and it's big. And the same thing, the choice between migration and modernization is one that goes back to, like you said, goes back to culture. It goes back to what your goals are for your strategy, cloud strategy, business strategy, and even people strategy. You want to build out those skills. And so it's something that is close to my heart because that's where I came from, the idea of application modernization, taking the step to containerization and serverless and edge and building on this cloud journey. And it's like we designed it. It starts with that landing, it starts with that first step, and then it builds and grows from there.
Exactly. And then let's move on to our final pillar of the cloud adoption framework. Okay, we have moved into the cloud. We have started a workload there. Now, how do we ensure that we know what's happening up there? So the first section of the management and operations pillar, it's all about monitoring, visibility, and audits. So first of all, we want to ensure that everything is working the way it should. We want to know how everything is working. And finally, we want to know if there are any changes to what we have deployed. We talked about security. What happens if some configurations are changed? That would be an opportunity for a security exposure. So that's why setting up the right visibility tools based on the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Observability and Management Services framework will help you understand how you are working with the cloud and will help you understand if there's anything that you should be on top of to avoid any risks and to ensure that there's smooth operations in the cloud. The second one is all about optimization. As the environment evolves, we have seen that in some cases, the organizational needs change. In some cases, the demand is higher. In some other cases, it's lower. And we want to ensure, given that we have the opportunity to optimize as much as possible these environments, that you are getting the best ROI of your cloud investment. So in some cases, probably the original architecture was consuming 80% of compute power for your instances, but at some point it might actually drop to probably 20%. So that would be a great opportunity for us to shut down some compute power and to actually stop those meters that are running towards that meter. So the idea here is let's keep a full eye on how everything is working. And if there's an opportunity to save money, let's do it. If there's some opportunity to re-architect to ensure that we can further optimize or deliver better results or better business value for our organization, then this is the right approach to do it. We actually have a good set of best practices on how to do it. And in 3 pillars, cost, usage, and architecture, we will be able to help you get the best ROI, as I mentioned. And then finally, support and incident management. Of course, nobody likes to talk about this, but we know that things might go wrong. And this is something that we need to think about. We need to ensure that as we are building our workloads and as we are moving into, as I was mentioning, more critical workloads, we need to ensure that we have the right high availability, the right disaster recovery, the right resiliency for our workloads. So it's very, very important that we have a backup plan to ensure that we can operate in the best way possible at all times. And then in case something goes wrong, we need to understand what are the steps that need to happen to ensure that we are back into operations as soon as possible. So very, very important to keep this in mind. Very, very important to document what is the step, what are the steps that need to be followed before the actual incident happens. And in this way, we can ensure that we have a solid cloud environment where our organization can rely. And then with this, we can actually provide that value that we were talking about back to the organization. Any comments on this, Jeremy?
Yeah, I was just quickly, because I know we're coming up short on time, but this part of the cloud journey is a really positive feedback loop on itself, and it leads into cost and it leads into security, where if you have the proper monitoring and the proper the visibility from your development through ops, then that allows you to right size your environment. You know what's going on, again, from that security and monitoring, and you can report back to your auditing bodies or internal security bodies that that you are abiding by the rules and regulations. And then it lets you know when you get into that support or that incident what's going on. So if something happens, you know what it looks like, you know how to get there, you know what the environment looked like leading up to the moment that the incident occurred, you know what it's supposed to look like, you know what it usually looks like. So this is, like you said, it's not necessarily the most fun part of it, but it is, one of the most crucial for operating in the cloud.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yep.
And just to
going into what's next with the CAF, this roadmap, and I know it's a building work in progress. It's this living framework that we're building out.
That is correct. I always get asked, when are we going to be done with the Cloud Adoption Framework? The reality is that as long as there are innovations in the Cloud Adoption Framework will keep evolving. So right now we have the core content. Kenna has shared with you in the text pane the link. That's the core content that we have created. Those are our pillars. And then as we move forward, we will be creating more vertical-oriented content so that we can help organizations in different verticals with some of the risk and compliance needs that they might have, specifically when they are moving into the cloud, so that we can ensure that there's a great support from OCI for all of our customers. And then we will also be working on some workshops that our field organization will be able to help with, and those will include reference architectures, those let me call them guided tours on all of what we have discussed, so that at the end of these workshops, the organization can actually end up with a solid cloud environment running right there into OCI. We will be adding additional articles. We will be adding more communications to the framework so that you stay up to date with all of the progress that we're making here.
Awesome. Yeah. And I encourage all of us to, or all of our customers to keep up with this, because like you said, as long as there's innovations in the cloud, there's going to be a need for security adjustments, for adjustments across the way. Do you want to adopt these new features and these products to, evaluate them with your CCOE? Do they better the economy of your cloud model? Those things need to constantly be reevaluated and through this process. And we as Oracle and you guys as developing this CAF are ready to adopt those into this process procedure to guide our customers along the way. It's super interesting just to see how we're attacking this and taking this on as a company, supporting our customers in our cloud. And I want to thank you for putting this together. I'm going to close this out by just saying, thanks everyone for being here. Pablo, thank you so much for speaking to us today. If there's any questions, feel free to write those right now in the Q&A, and we'll address them as we can. If not, feel free to reach out to us through that. I know there's a blog that was posted. If there's comments on that, or if there's comments to us directly, feel free to reach out, and we're always here to help. That's what these sessions are for. Thanks for coming out today, and I hope this was beneficial to you. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Kenna.
Excellent. Yeah, I'd just like to echo the thank you. Thank you, Pablo, for coming and being our special guest and taking us through these steps. I have shared some resources in chat for folks, and all of those resources will also be available with the replay as well. So be able to dive in a little bit further, use that framework and the things that Pablo was talking about to help with you or your customers or anyone who's working on that as well. Thank you for filling out that final poll. And I do have one more, just our usual conclusion, because we like to get your feedback on that, how the session went. But other than that, I just appreciate all of you for spending your time with us. I encourage you to check out future sessions in the Day One and Beyond series that we have coming up next Tuesday, the following Wednesday, as I mentioned, alternating back and forth for the next couple of months. We got a lot of good stuff coming up. And our usual Thursday deep dives are happening every week as well. So appreciate your time, everyone. Appreciate the presenters' time. Thank you to Jeremy and Larry in the background. Thank you to Pablo again. And have a wonderful day, everyone.